Hello there. Hi. A bit of a delay going live this morning, but anyway, welcome everybody. And just say hello to our guests once again. Hello, Paul, and hello, Cecilia. How are you both today?
I'm very well today. Thank you on our first show.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Well, I thought we could get straight into it today. And so, Paul, can you just tell us just a wee bit about yourself and what is it you are hoping to achieve with Sustainable Strategy Brief Live?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you everybody who's joined in today. Very, very appreciative. I'm Professor Paul Phillips, business and sustainable strategy expert. And about this show, this commenced from an idea that originated early this year. My wife and I did a round the world trip. And going around the world, one was able to see sustainability, ESG issues from a global perspective and seeing how it was acted upon and treated differently in different markets. And that ranged basically briefly from the New Zealand side with the wine, and in the Hollywood division police, we met with the chief of police and he was talking to me about it. And he's actually a Leeds graduate as well. In terms of the show, what we're trying to do very, very quickly here is the aim is to help leaders who want to see sustainability, ESG, appear in their P&L account. That's a new issue, the directive, which this show is all about. And secondly, we want to help leaders to close the gap between aspirations and implementation. We know that from research in the sustainability field, 70% of projects are currently failing. And lastly, we want to help the communication processes within organizations, strategy, finance, operations, marketing, CSOs, sustainability people. We want them to communicate to develop better sustainable strategies. So that is the aim. And we have a tagline there called Stay Ahead. And the Stay Ahead is to help people to stay ahead of their peer group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And now one of the themes of today is strategy eats compliance for breakfast. So, Cecilia, I'm going to ask you a very pertinent question, which is, what did you have for breakfast this morning then?
As I have always the same breakfast, which is Greek yogurt, blueberries, and a cafe latte. That's what I go for.
Okay, well, sounds very nice. And what do you think about this idea that strategy eats compliance for breakfast then?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we've seen ESG specifically from an EU perspective. It's very much been led by regulatory and compliance perspective. We have a lot of legislation that is now going through tremendous changes as we speak. So I would say that it's been led very much also from an EU perspective. And EU has, of course, been the front runner of the kind of compliance-based sustainability reporting framework. But at the end of the day, with these changes, and also for this episode, we are talking about that we need a strategic lens. And I think in terms of a healthy breakfast, you need a combination of both. So I think compliance and strategy should really fit in together so you have a healthy meal when you are preparing your sustainability strategy.
Okay, great. And similar question for you, Paul. So you have kippers for breakfast, did you, or something this morning? What did you have for breakfast?
I used to eat kippers, but they used to, the kitchen would smell for hours afterwards, so I was banned from cooking.
Yeah. Something to cook outside on the barbecue, I think.
I'm more of a porridge man now anyway. That keeps me going. Okay. In terms of this strategy, eats compliance for breakfast, a couple of things come to mind. The first thing is that compliance is kind of on the floor now. It's not the be-all and end-all of activities in organizations. What I mean, you can be fully compliant in this world, but you can be strategic, you can be exposed. And this is a thing of the show we can look at. And then secondly, we've got the capital flows. The capital flows have to align with the strategy, not with the policies of organizations. And what we mean, investors and lenders, they want to see where the money is going through the P&L account. They don't want to see it just as a box ticking exercise. And lastly, what this is all showing, which is really interesting for me, it means organizations now need to rewire themselves for this new phenomenon of ESG too. So I think that's in a real nutshell. So thanks.
All right, Paul. Well, on the subject of ESG2 or ESG 2.0, can you tell us what that is?
Well, I was running a workshop last month with a financial services organisation, a large one, and we were talking about this. And they said in their organisation they had an equation, which I thought was great. As a professor, we like these type of things. And the equation basically said that ESG 2.0 equals business model, it equals the purpose of the organisation, performance impact, and inclusive accessibility for stakeholders. And I thought that is a definition where they summarize the key things they want their sustainable strategies to do. Thank you.
Okay, so so that's ESG 2.0. For a moment, I thought you were going to say equal 5, but I think you might have said 5 things. Can you just remind me of what those things are?
Yeah, the things are the business model, strategy, which is a very important thing. Then we also know it's about the ability to generate the purpose of the organisation. There's phenomenal like purpose-driven leadership. Purpose is a big thing in organisations. And then the third thing is the measurement, which is the performance side of things. You've got to deliver performance. You and I briefly talked about that. It's not just the 3 Ps, it goes kind of like beyond that. And lastly, I think it's an important dimension, I noticed it around the world trip, is one of the inclusive access to the organisation from the various stakeholders. And I thought that captured it.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And Cecilia, so is this the thing? Are we moving from? Are we in the era of transition from ESG 1.0 to ESG 2.0? Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We can see that also in terms of if you look at the policy landscape and the business case, it's clearly regulatory reporting focus to a true business case, and that will tremendously change how an organization look at sustainability and ESG, as well as the type of people you need in your organization in order to achieve those objectives. So we see a drastic change in the regulatory regime as well as the business case for sustainability. So it's an exciting and good time in that respect, because it clarifies for organization what they need to do in order to properly achieve sustainability, apart from what we, the ESG and the hype around it, which sometimes have, lend itself to a bit of a more PR rather than a true business case exercise.
Okay, thank you for that, Cecilia. And Paul, just now you define what ESG 2.0 is quite well, or very well. Does this tie in with the concept of sustainable value, do you think?
Absolutely. In a nutshell, I would say, sustainable value, if we just look at ESG1 and ESG2 phenomena, ESG1, and we're going to come on to this, it has been about reporting, reporting to different standards from around the world. But ESG2 now is about sustainable value. And I think that is giving us the roadmap to move forward to. And if I may just elaborate upon that, value should have certain attributes. It should be, in pursuit of value, you should not be depleting the 3 Ps, the people, the places, and the planet, so to speak. And I think it's fair to say that when you're going through this change, transformational change or transition change, we're finding that organizational leaders are now getting depleted of energy and well-being, and there's a lot of research in that going through a transformation in this area is huge in terms of what it takes on for one's well-being. And I think that is something to look at. And the thing about it, when we talk about value, it's not about value that people use the word. It's about value ingrained from economics, so to speak. We're talking about the economic side of things, which means it focuses on the financial, the hard stuff of this phenomenon. So that's why when we say sustainability, people are comfortable. But when we put the word in value, then that becomes a problem, because we can think about, from an organization perspective, you need to have a value proposition. And that's a big problem for a lot of organizations. They don't have that. And the last bit I'll just add there, when we talk about value, it should be done quarter after quarter. And that's why I think it's the big thing that we kind of do the big project with a lot of effort. Then we stop, then we go down another project. We need to be sustainable quarter after quarter. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Now I've got a question about, it's almost about Nintendo, but it's not quite about Nintendo. It's about Super Mario Draghi. And Cecilia, is this 2.0? Does this all boil down to Mario Draghi and his report from last year? Is this what has created this initiative, or is this something that was happening anyway?
I would say a combination of factors. Sure, that strategic report, we see the implementation of that, and not just in terms of what we call the omnibus proposal, which is the two kind of big legislative frameworks, the so-called CSRD and due diligence directive. And they are undergoing, I mean, both of them went through the European system in the last mandate period, but they are now being transformed. And as we speak, they are in so-called trialogue. So it's a discussion between the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers to come to a conclusion. And that means that both of these frameworks will be watered down. And Mario Draghi very much pushed for that and also said that we were overburdening companies, specifically if you looked at Europe in a global context, a competitive context. And that was basically his report to identify opportunities as well as risks for Europe. And of course, the kind of legislative the legislative framework and the regulatory framework was one thing he very much identified and talked about. But it goes beyond that. It's to ensure that Europe becomes a place you want to invest, to boost entrepreneurship and an investment in startups and scale-ups. And we've seen that type of strategy also in this new commission. So it's a combined push. And from the kind of startup scale-up perspective, we see a lot of organizations that they are, of course, pursuing a sustainability value. We talk the ESG, if you like, perspective, but they might not call themselves sustainability companies and so on. It's just part of the parcels nowadays, rather than just focusing on that lens. So it's an interesting shift. But yes, I would say geopolitical changes, specifically the Trump administration and their view, their very kind of aggressive non-ESG view, has impacted this, but it's wider than that. And we see that process as we speak. So for sure, there is a strong shift, and the Draghi report plays a vital role in this.
Okay, so as we know, the whole standard thing seems to be chopping and changing rather quickly at the moment. It's quite difficult to keep up with what's going on. And Paul, is this creating a degree of turmoil, do you think?
Absolutely, Michael. Yes, it really is. I mean, the ground is moving under everybody's feet at the moment. It's like this is sort of organisations have been shaken, and it's causing a turmoil. And part of this turmoil is the fact that that the regulators can move at a much faster pace than organisations, because organisations are not being built for this. And go back to strategy, in a way, organisations are not built for the strategy that's needed for today and tomorrow. So we've got this turmoil in organisations. We got the regulators moving very, very quickly. Organisations are bringing in staff to address the issue, but then the issues change again. So therefore, the organisations, I've been led to believe, have got people that they're trying to retrain in areas. And that's one of the reasons why I felt this sort of community environment where we can talk these things through to keep everybody up to date. But the last thing I would say, that don't forget that in this world with geopolitical pressures, organisations have another phenomenon to deal with, and this is ESG to sustainability, as we call it. So it's a big thing for organisations. And as Cecilia, who's an expert in this, has been informing me, you've got the global dimension of the UK, Europe, and the rest of the world are all jockeying for positions, and organisations who are global have to find their accounting frameworks to address these issues. And if you only look at some of the sustainability reports, I looked at one for Singapore Airlines just recently, and it's over 250 pages on top of their annual report. So you've got to say who's actually going to be reading all these things as well. So yes, I'll move on and we can move on to the next one. I could talk about this all day. I must stop. Sorry.
All right. Okay. And so Cecilia, does all this mean that the skill sets are changing? Is the skill sets of an old-fashioned sustainability officer no longer quite the same skill sets that you need today?
Well, like we talked about, and also from an international perspective, mentioned the international standards, but specifically the push has very much been EU-led in terms of the compliance and the standards, and that has also led to, of course, hirings, but also don't forget we have a lot of startup companies and consultancies that are very successfully so and grow quite a lot in order to help companies report under the European Sustainability Reporting Standard, because of course many companies were falling under its scope. So it kind of led to a hiring of a lot of sustainability consultants that were expert in reporting framework on ESG, of course. But when we are changing and the kind of detailed regulatory requirements and the type of standards, I mean, tomorrow EFRAG, and they will formally launch the new standards, and they are of course simplified. The need for so many consultants or so many staff doing this type of compliance work, of course, that's going to diminish, and we've seen that within companies. So the role, what you would need an organization for a kind of ESG2 role is very different, and I think we will talk about that later, the chief sustainability officer and the role of people in the C-suite and how they will operate in this type of framework. So yes, for sure, from a more kind of, let's say, middle management compliance expert, it will move to a more, I would say, it will sit more with finance. A business and finance understanding will be key going forward.
Okay, and I think I'd like to turn now to the issue of three bets. Three bets for the future of sustainability and Sustainability 2.0. And the first of these bets, I beg your pardon, is the idea of turning ESG from a cost leak to a cost engine. So what does that mean, Paul? Can you explain? Do you agree? The same question to you, Cecilia.
I absolutely agree. If you liken it to a plumber, when they come into your house in the leak, they have to fix the leak to stop the water from causing further damage. The P&L can be treating that same phenomenon whereby you don't want to have the costs leaking away your revenue from your P&L item. So what we actually mean there is actually to investigate all the potential areas that you could have leaks. And what has interested me a lot recently from speaking to some very wise people in this field, I've been looking and been informed about water, for example. How do you account for water in your P&L account or balance sheet? It's not about what you just use. It's about how does water interact with your products and processes. And this is so this is something that I think that it's important. You look at your water. And nature's got a new standard that's come out recently. How do you incorporate nature into the P&L count? So when we say about the leaks, look at all the potential costs or the wastages that you have in your accounts, and how do you account for them, bearing in mind the current accounting standards and international reporting standards.
Okay, thank you. And if someone seems to be paying very close attention, if I, or maybe Paul, I'm not sure, probably more likely to be me, said Sustainability 2.0 when I meant ESG 2.0, please.
Oh, right.
Apologies. But congratulations for of course, if that was, I just said that to see if you're paying attention. So well done for passing that test. Cecilia, what do you think about this idea of it going from a cash leak to a cash engine? Agree, and why?
Yes, I agree, and that is a completely different perspective, of course, that one has to take. But we already see that, and I would just like to add, we are under, we are currently undergoing rapid technological change for a lot of organizations. Many organizations are heavily invested in AI, and of course there is a sustainability and ESG element to this, apart the energy use perspective, which is coming more to the forefront. There is also a staff issue, a skill issue, question whether or not, to what an extent you are actually saving money with this, and rather than so again, it's a people are, they have heavily invested because the assumption was that you would save money and you make your processes more efficient. But then again, taking a broader perspective, you might realize that, there are problems here that you can address in order to ensure sustainable growth. That has been part of the picture. So it's just one example where things are moving, and you need then an ESG lens in order to assess your investment, even in technology. So I think that is, we see that more and more.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. That kind of takes me to my next question, really, which is about growth. Because it's very popular these days for people to talk about degrowth. But I think when we were discussing this show, we felt that ESG 2.0 is closely associated with the idea of for an organization to grow its revenue. Is that right? And then this is the antithesis to the idea of degrowth, presumably. Can you both give me your thought? I'll let you go first, Cecilia. Paul went first last time, and let me know what you think about that.
Yes, and I think we come to kind of a key point here when we look at ESG 1 and ESG 2. Degrowth. I mean, if you look at ESG in that perspective, you would say, degrowth is a natural process of it, and as well, it's been very fashionable to talk about degrowth, and we need to push a degrowth agenda for the planet. And especially in the current economic and political context, this is an argument that is simply not flying, specifically in a global competitive perspective. That has clearly gone away from the political agenda. And what is pushed now is growth. And we need to start to talk about growth. It's not a dirty word, because growth can coexist with the proper ESG strategy. And that is clearly what is on the agenda. And I think that the degrowth moment, it has a lot of value, but in the current context, no, companies are striving for growth, and that's how it's going to go. So ESG needs to be adapted into that type of framework and language, which will be quite controversial sometimes, but we see that more.
All right, thank you for that, Cecilia. I was just blocking out the sun there. And Paul, same question to you. So ESG 2.0, does this take us to the idea of using ESG, or in a much broader context? Somebody pointed out ESG and sustainability are not the same thing, but there's clearly an overlap into helping an organization grow.
I think very quickly, if you take ESG and sustainability, they are different issues, because the ESG has brought in more of a business case into the phenomenon. So therefore, if you're talking about business cases, you've got to create the right business case. And you can't go and borrow money unless the lender feels secure you're able to pay it back. And the way they look for that is to see the revenue line growing and the cost lines to be controlled. So it's not about, is it a good thing or a bad thing? If you're going to advance money, and when I did some workshops last month, and they were making business cases to the executive group, and I think that you have to do it. But the issue is, I think there's a balance, because there are some groups that will be saying growth is a bad word. It's all about degrowth. But in other groups, which is I think the ESG 2.0 groups, we'll be talking about it's a necessary thing. So what I would say is that you need to have a business case that provides opportunities for the growth. And that goes back to strategic management, which I'm very much welded to. So I've tried to put my point across that the business case dictates the growth phenomenon, but we mustn't forget the degrowth. If I may add, if you ignore degrowth from a tourism hat on, look at some of these countries that are now going through degrowth strategies. We're getting too many tourists, so we have to keep the growth phenomenon under control.
Okay. So we've had a question. How would the experts, and you, Michael, that's me, welcome an alternative and or additional rating that is fully focused on carbon reduction? A climate rating, as it were, that informed those with investments in an organization, where if an investment company could not provide a clear carbon reduction journey, or where that is impossible, e.g. oil and gas, investments would be removed. Any thoughts about this question, either of you?
I think it's a very, very clever question from a clever person who asked it. So I've got to be very careful here. But given it's just been thrown at us, I would say that for the bank, if someone did not do in terms of the carbon side of things under control, to get a lender not to lend because it's out of control, I think is part of the argument, because a lot of these lenders are driven by returns. So I think we have to make the case for the carbon side for it to be seen as ultra important and useful for the well-being of everybody, and then the lenders can be under greater control, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Cecilia, have you got any thoughts about that question? I nearly
Yes.
called you old then. Yeah.
I agree. It's a great question, but I think it has to go beyond just carbon, and that's what we see. We were looking at other aspects of ESG and sustainability as a whole. It's moving way beyond just carbon at the moment, and I think that's the right way forward. But I think it's a very interesting thought.
Okay, and I want to turn to the question of the 90-day cycles. Paul, I think you felt that we need to tie a sustainable strategy into 90-day cycles that deliver measurable results. Can you expand on that, please? And then I'll ask you for your opinions on that as well.
Yeah. I think this stems from the 70% plus failure rate in implementation of sustainable strategies. I think the problem with that is that we find that organizations will go through a change. The change may be positive or negative, but what definitely happens, it loses momentum within the organization. Then they have to create a renewal strategy to start again. When I say the 30, 60, 90 days, I'm talking about think of strategies in those type of cycles. So you can continue to showing you've got momentum in your strategic endeavors that you can show to your stakeholders. And if they can see these endeavors of momentum, then you're likely to get the right rewards when you go for financing and you go for whatever you need in terms of getting your strategy across. I do feel that a lot of organizations have a big bang approach. Everybody's happy, and then everything dies. Then consultants come in again to say you've got to do it again, and it goes around that. So the 90-day cycles that keep things continuous, so that strategy is a continuing process.
Okay, and Cecilia, any thoughts on the 90-day cycle in the context of a sustainable strategy?
I just saw we have the question here, which is kind of linked to that.
Okay. Well, pray do answer the question first. Do you have any thoughts about that question?
So
how does business growth reduce the company's negative impacts on the environment?
Okay, very simply, I'd say if you've got business growth, you've got money, then you can do things to reduce impacts on the world.
Okay, Cecilia?
Yeah, you have to look at because that's the thing, to be pro-growth, and at the same, you have to look very closely to your operations. And we can see there is a lot of things you can do, depending on, of course, the business you are in. But we see more circular economy, looking at every aspect and see how that can actually help you and promote your growth, rather than treating this as a separate kind of exercise, a sustainability approach, and your financial reporting, your financial. Okay, it has to go. And in Europe, we see that it's also pushed quite a lot, the kind of circular economy and how that can promote. So you can grow, but at the same time reduce your impact. But it's very tricky. We should not be afraid of saying that this is hard, very, very. But
indeed it is. But don't you think though that this, maybe this is a slightly adjacent point, but though this issue that you can't have sustainability and growth misses the point that actually a lot of renewable energy, for example, or energy efficiency is actually very cost effective. And if you can generate energy in a more efficient way, then the company with lower overheads is going to find it easier to grow because they've got more resources available to spend on growth. So, I mean, is there a trade-off? I mean, I'm not convinced that there is that much of a trade-off between sustainable green tech, certainly, and growth.
who are you answering that question to? Sorry, I've got a big
either of you. Paul, please pray answer.
Okay, I mean, in my strategy lectures, if any of my students are listening to this show at the moment, there may be a few of them, the thing I say in my first strategy lecture is strategy is about choices and trade-offs, and it's not easy. So what I'm trying to say here is not something we can say this is the answer to it. This is the fact of life. You've got these trade-offs to make, and that's why strategic management, in my perspective, is so exciting, because we can create models for these trade-offs that we need to do. And then when we've got the economic friends coming involved with their different models, and now with your AI and all your other fast technologies, people are creating very sophisticated models to look at these trade-offs. Does that make sense? And actually, you can actually make a lot of money out of it if you just look at Citadel, what they did in a couple of years ago when they used their techniques to look at the weather forecasting and got the best weather forecasting system in the world and made about $12 billion. Anyway, sorry, big question here.
I thought it's a good question. Thank you, Paul, for calling me clever. Good to learn about ESG 2.0. I like the aspiration of ESG. Just feel it allows bad players to avoid taking any real action on the single biggest issue we face as humans, climate change. If we do not address carbon reduction, the other parts of ESG will not matter. Future generations will be too busy surviving on an uninhabitable world to worry about how many LGBT and disabled peoples are hunting with them. I don't know if you need to comment on that, but I thought it was quite an amusing comment. We are kind of running over just a wee bit now. Do you think we could sum up? Cecilia, do you want to go first? Can you just, if give you 45 seconds, how can you give me like an overview of what you feel about ESG 2.0, what it means in the future, etc.?
I would say we see, first of all, the political landscape is completely changing. And that's the key fundamental issue here. And that has a huge impact upon regulatory and compliance environment that has, to a large extent, driven a lot of activities in the field of ESG. So that's a fundamental change. And we're moving into a more investor-led, business-led, business case view, and we call that ESG2. So from the kind of strict compliance, just on more and more reporting requirements and detailed standards, to a case where reporting will become more simplified, but the case of ESG will not go away, it will change form. So the kind of key aspect would say, just because the compliance landscape is changing and to a large extent is watered down, doesn't mean that ESG is dead. It's just changing form, and it needs to provide business value. That is not either or, it becomes part of the case, and not just in terms of saving or saving money or ensuring or understanding what you're doing and the impact you have. Actually, every activity will be led by a kind of a double lens. How can this promote the growth of our company, at the same time minimize the damage done? And that will we have to done in every matrix and in every exercise. So the people who have worked in compliance and focused on that will have to kind of view things in a new way, which is with the business dimension, and that's sometimes very tricky. So we see a transition from the people working within organizations, as well as stakeholder, regulators, politicians, and business leaders. So this is what we are trying to capture.
Okay, we're kind of out of time, but we're getting questions coming in. Paul, do you want to, Paul or Cecilia, I don't mind who, want to answer this question. Do you expect that the US is going to be a continuing hurdle for sustainability? It seems that between the antitrust threats against climate alliances and the Trump administration limiting the consideration of carbon emissions in the context of fiduciary duties, we might be in for an uphill battle when working with the US. Uphill battle, because a lot of the states are not going that way, are they? A lot of the states are diverging from national policy. But any thoughts about that?
My immediate thought from a strategy perspective is that Trump, if I may say so, is a blip. You know, in years ahead, we'll be looking back So I think that we shouldn't just think that Trump will be around for a long time. And that ties back to a point that somebody raised the question before, which we haven't got time to go back to. But I would say in strategy, it's about time periods and stakeholders. And what we find, stakeholders have different time periods, and sustainable value incorporates stakeholders with different time values. So if you bring them all together, you create a problem and a friction. That's why, us academics, we need to exploit these areas with the help of some of these excellent people that are part of this. It's a puzzle, so it's solvable, but we haven't solved the big picture yet.
Okay, Paul, I'd like to give the last words to you. I've got to give you a twofold question. A very brief sum up. What's the important lesson from today? And also, do you have any a call to action? So a twofold question. Lesson from today, call for action.
Okay, first of all, I'd say that sustainable value is here to stay. It's not just part of the story. It's got to be central theme. I would also say we've used the term ESG2, but who's to say how long is it going to last? We don't know. It may be another phenomenon. So in case this is played back in a year's time and ESG2 is gone, I just want to be flexible on that side. So I want to say that it could be ESG1 and then it will be replaced by something that we have today labeled ESG2. So I want to make that a clear point. And thirdly, I want to go back to my trip around the world where I saw this working in different countries with different societies, groups of people. And I really do feel that we need conversations like this to help things move forward. So I just hope that's something we can do. So that's my 3 thoughts for the day. And there was a last point you said, Michael, sorry.
Call for action.
The call for action, there's so much fun things that we've discussed.
ESG 3.0, there you go.
Next year.
What I would say, I think there were some questions that have been made that we didn't have time to answer. If you can just DM me on LinkedIn, I will endeavour to respond, or you want to continue the conversation. That is something that I'm actually will encourage you to do. Just drop me a DM. Put the show's title in it, and I'll do my best to respond if I can. I don't want us just to be end. We will be having another show next month, so watch this space after Christmas. And before we go, I'd like to thank Michael for being excellent moderator there. Great questions, and also Cecilia with your wisdom, pearls of wisdom that's helped us through this rather tough. And it could have been a dry content if you think about international reporting standards, but you do it in such a way that enlightens everybody. So thank you very much, everybody. And also for all the people that signed up and that's here, please watch this space, keep us informed, tell us how we can improve things, any ideas. We just want to form this community, academics, business people, industries, markets, across markets, and help the world change and help organization change as well. That's me finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you everybody for watching today. And so from me, goodbye. From Cecilia.
Bye.
And from Paul.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you very much for watching.
All right, finished.